What are
Yeah.
a few common denominators that you've uncovered when you think back to some of your previous episodes of what successful people are doing besides that of taking action? Any
Yeah.
specific tactics that you like to share?
100%. And I love it. This is almost a softball because it's 100% in my wheelhouse. When I started the podcast, you're exactly right. You were the second guest I had ever interviewed, and we didn't know each other at that time. And I was so excited about the podcast because I knew I was going to have an opportunity to learn and be able to just get better as a human, whether people listened or didn't listen. It was just a huge opportunity to get in that sphere of influence of folks. And through that, there are a ton of common denominators. And I'm in the process of finishing a book called What the Uncommon Have in Common, because uncommon, really highly successful people, not just in business, but in their life and in their relationships and in their health, there's some common denominators. And the first one is really what you alluded to earlier around embracing the fear of failure. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a part of success. And I love how you framed that. Real failure, there's not really any failure in taking action, because when you have a growth mindset, all it is an opportunity to learn something to help get you where you want to go. But we've kind of been trained by a lot of formal academia that success is over here and failures over here, and we have to decide which way we want to go, like it's a linear path, because you can't fail every quiz, fail every test. Even if you learned everything that you got wrong in that world, you're still a quote unquote failure. But almost every person that I've ever interviewed and been coached by or mentored by understands that those are the opportunities and the building blocks of how you become successful, so long as you learn those things in there. So that's an important one. And I think a lot of people kind of overlook it and like, well, I'm not necessarily afraid of failing. I'm okay failing. And I would challenge him that that may be true, but a lot of times we're afraid of people seeing us fail. We don't necessarily want them to know that we've taken an L or we've had a setback or there's something that hasn't worked out how we wanted. And we have in our minds a lot of times that to be an elite professional, you have to succeed or get results from an extremely high percentage of the things that you do. Like 80-90% of the time, you got to have those wins. But you look at other elite professionals. The metaphor I always like to use is of baseball. If you're a professional baseball player at any level and you have a 200 batting average, you're probably playing AA or AAA baseball. Now, if you have a 300 batting average, you're for sure in the major leagues, and you might even be an all-star. And if you have a 400 batting average, you're Ted Williams. You're one of the greatest of all time. Okay, well, to be one of the best in the world in the major leagues at what you do, a 300 batting average means 70% of the time they fail. They're not getting on base. They're grounding out. They're flying out. They're striking out, whatever. Okay, so to be the best in that arena, you're still quote unquote failing 70% of the time. And it's not behind closed doors. It's in front of 40,000 people that are calling you everything but the name your mom gave you. And then you have to go and do it again in 20, 25 minutes and in a couple of innings. And I think as mortgage professionals, we have a lot to learn from that, because you go out and do it and you need to learn what happened, because every time they're at bat and they're not getting the result that they want, they learn something about the pitcher. They learn something about the defense and the outfield and the infield and whatever's happening around them, so that they can come back the next time and execute at a higher level. And it doesn't take 50, 60, 80, 90% of the time to be one of the best. And I think that that's where it ties into that taking massive action, is realizing that failure is a part of the process. So that's really kind of the first, bullet point there. The other thing I think that we really need to pay attention to, we alluded to as well, which is people pay for solutions to their problems. And it doesn't necessarily mean monetarily. There's a lot of conversation around videos and content and social media. Well, in today's day and age, people are consuming content in a lot of different times of their day and times of their life. And so I always like to tell people, does it pass the DMV test? In the state of Texas, we have something called the godforsaken DMV. Now, that's not what's on the sign, but that's sure what we experience. You have to show up at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So when they open, they give you a number or a time to come back hours later, and you're there for a couple more hours. It's a whole terrible institution and experience. Well, I share that because when you're in a moment like that, or you're in a doctor's waiting room forever, and you open up social media, no one's saying, man, I hope I see a definition of amortization, or man, I hope I see how many, loans that a loan officer has closed last month. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with someone doing that on social media, but what I'm saying is the problem that someone has in that moment is they want to escape their environment. They want to be entertained. They want to be informed. They want something different. And so they're going to pay you with their attention to solve that problem. And really, really high performing people, successful people understand this concept that we all have different small and large problems throughout our life that we can solve for people. And that's going to create the attention that you need. It's going to create the network that you need, which creates those opportunities in business. And I think the last piece of this, and I'll turn it back over, is kind of this third bullet point is realizing what business that we're actually in. And I heard Ed Milet give a talk around some of this stuff, and he, use the example of McDonald's. Say, what business is McDonald's in? Right? You hear answers of fast food and convenience, or you get somebody like, hey, they're in the real estate business. Well, they are that too. They actually own more real estate than anybody on planet Earth, except for the Catholic Church, which I think is kind of interesting. But the business they're actually in is love and happiness. Tony Robbins says our two biggest fears are being enough and being loved. Are we good enough? Are we smart enough? Do we have enough money? That feeds into our biggest fear of not being loved or being appreciated or being included. And so they understood that because those are people's biggest fears, the way that we can grow a business is make them happy. Their best-selling meal is a happy meal. They even created a clown, which made kids happy until Stephen King ruined that for everybody. And the best-selling product that McDonald's has is Coca-Cola, a Coke and a smile. So how does that relate to mortgage? We're not in the mortgage business. We're not even in the real estate business. We're in the business of making people happy, making them feel loved, and having an environment that they can love their family. And how do you do that? By solving problems that they have. Because nobody wants a mortgage. No one wants a big fat mortgage. Give me the biggest mortgage you have, the biggest payment that you can give me. Nobody wants that. They want what the mortgage provides for them. And so to kind of tie that together, really understanding failure is part of the process and learning from it, understanding what people pay for in those solutions and what business we're really in. Those are three themes, whether it was directly or indirectly, that almost every guest I've ever had understood, and that's why they've grown.